Welcome to the Heart's Haven. Let the story begin. A poor girl pulled a millionaire CEO from a sinking plane. The next morning, 5 Cadillacs arrived. The sky didn't fall all at once. It fractured, quietly at first, like something trying not to be noticed. 30,000 feet above the dark Atlantic, the private jet shuddered as if it had hit an invisible wall. The cabin lights flickered. A soft chime echoed overhead, too calm for what was coming. Outside the window, the storm moved like a living thing, thick clouds twisting, lightning tearing the sky open in jagged flashes. Most passengers never saw it coming. But in the very back row, a little girl did. Lily Carter sat curled into herself, her small hands gripping the straps of a worn-out backpack resting on her lap. The fabric was faded, the zipper slightly broken, but she held it like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Her sneakers were damp. Her hoodie too thin for the cold that seemed to seep through the walls. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not on a plane like this. Not surrounded by polished leather seats and quiet wealth. And definitely not in the middle of a storm that felt like it had a voice. Another jolt. Stronger this time. A glass rattled. Someone gasped. Somewhere up front, a man raised his voice, controlled, but edged with something unfamiliar. Ethan Caldwell. A name that moved markets. A man who built empires out of silence and strategy. He sat near the front, still in his tailored navy suit, fingers resting against the armrests like he could steady the world by holding onto it. But even he couldn't control this. The plane dipped, just enough to make every heartbeat pause. Then came the sound. Not loud. Not explosive. Just wrong. A deep groan beneath the floor. A shift in the air pressure. The kind of silence that doesn't belong at 30,000 feet. Lily's eyes lifted slowly. She didn't scream. She didn't move. She just listened. Because when you've lived long enough with uncertainty, you learn to recognize it before anyone else does. Another flash of lightning filled the cabin, illuminating faces frozen in confusion, in denial, in fear they hadn't named yet. And in that brief second of light, Lily saw him. The man in the front seat. Still. Alone. Distant. Like someone who had everything, except a reason to hold on. The plane tilted again, sharper now. Oxygen masks trembled above, not yet released, but waiting. And somewhere between that moment and the next, everything began to fall. Not just the aircraft, but the illusion that anyone on board was in control. And in the quiet space between thunder and impact, a little girl tightened her grip on a broken backpack. As if, somehow, she already knew. She was about to hold someone else's life in her hands. The world did not end in noise. It unraveled in silence. For a long second after the final drop, there was nothing but the sound of water pressing against metal, a deep, steady hum that swallowed every other thought. The cabin tilted at an angle that did not feel real, as if gravity itself had forgotten its place. Ethan Caldwell opened his eyes slowly. Everything was dim. Blue. Distorted. Cold air clung to his skin, sharp and unfamiliar. His head throbbed with a dull pressure, not pain, just weight, like waking from a dream that had not finished yet. The seatbelt cut across his chest, holding him in place as the plane settled into something it was never meant to become. Stillness. Then a drip. Then another. Water. It slid along the floor, quiet at first, almost gentle. But there was something about the way it moved that felt urgent, like time had shifted direction and was now moving faster than anyone inside could follow. Ethan tried to move. His fingers twitched. His breath came shallow, uneven. The world refused to focus. And then, a voice. "Sir, please." Soft. Small. Close. Not panic. Not chaos. Just steady. Ethan's eyes struggled to find it, blinking against the dim emergency lights that flickered above. The shapes around him blurred in and out, shadows where people had been, outlines of seats, the faint shimmer of water rising inch by inch. "Sir, you cannot sleep right now," the voice came again. Closer this time. And somehow, stronger. Through the haze, he saw her. The little girl from the back. Lily Carter. She was standing where no child should be standing. One hand braced against the seat, the other reaching toward him. Her hoodie was damp now, her hair clinging to her cheeks, but her eyes, clear, focused, never left his. "You have to wake up," she said, her voice trembling just enough to remind him she was still just a child. "Please, stay with me." Ethan tried to speak. Nothing came out. The air felt thinner. The world heavier. His vision dipped again, darkness creeping at the edges. And then, a small hand wrapped around his wrist. Warm. Real. Not strong in the way adults measured strength, but steady in a way that did not break. "You cannot fall asleep," Lily whispered. "Not yet." Something in her voice reached him. Not urgency. Not fear. But belief. The kind that does not ask permission. The kind that simply holds on. Ethan swallowed, forcing breath back into his lungs, forcing his eyes to stay open. The ceiling above groaned softly as the plane shifted again, water now brushing against the base of the seats, rising slowly but surely. Time was no longer measured in minutes. It was measured in inches. In breaths. In choices. Lily stepped closer, her small shoes slipping slightly on the wet floor, but she did not stop. She tightened her grip on his arm, anchoring herself to him as if they were already connected by something deeper than circumstance. "We are getting out," she said quietly. Not a question. Not a hope. A promise. And in that moment, somewhere between the cold water and the fading light, Ethan Caldwell felt something he had not felt in years. Not control. Not power. But trust. He did not know how. He did not know why. But as the world around them continued to sink into silence, he held on to her voice. The water did not rush in. It crept. Slow. Relentless. Unstoppable. By the time Ethan could fully feel his fingers again, it had already reached his ankles. Cold wrapped around him like a warning he could not ignore. The cabin had shifted further, the angle steeper now, forcing everything, and everyone, into a quiet slide toward the lowest point. Lily noticed it before he did. She always did. "We cannot stay here," she said softly, her voice steady even as her small shoes slipped against the wet floor. "It is filling up." Ethan tried to sit forward. His muscles resisted, heavy and delayed, like his body was still deciding whether to wake up or let go. The seatbelt pressed tightly across his chest, holding him back. Lily followed his gaze. For a second, she hesitated. Not because she did not understand, but because she did. Her fingers moved to the buckle. It was larger than her hand. Stiff. Unfamiliar. She pulled once. Nothing. She adjusted her grip, her small hands trembling slightly from the cold. The metal clicked faintly but did not release. Behind them, the cabin let out another low groan. Overhead bins shifted. A faint ripple moved through the rising water, catching reflections of the flickering lights above. Lily closed her eyes for half a second. Then tried again. This time, the buckle gave. A soft click. Ethan leaned forward, the sudden freedom almost disorienting. His breath caught as the world tilted again, the weight of everything pressing down at once. Lily stepped closer immediately, bracing herself against him. "Slow," she whispered. "You have to go slow." He looked at her then. Really looked. Not as a blur. Not as a voice in the dark. But as a person. A child who should have been protected, now standing between him and everything that was trying to pull him under. How? His voice broke, rough and unsteady. How are you still? She shook her head quickly. No talking, she said. We have to move. Another inch of water climbed higher, soaking into the fabric of his pants, stealing warmth with quiet precision. The air felt thinner now, heavier, as if the space itself was shrinking. Lily glanced toward the front of the cabin. The main door was no longer an option. The angle made it unreachable, blocked by rows of seats that had shifted just enough to create a barrier no adult could easily pass. But Lily was not looking at the door. She was looking at the side. At a narrow section of the cabin wall where a small emergency panel sat, half submerged, almost hidden in shadow. She pointed. There, she said. We can go that way. Ethan followed her finger, his vision still unsteady but clearing with every breath he forced himself to take. It was a risk. It had to be. But standing still was no longer an option. Lily stepped forward first. Not waiting. Not asking. She moved carefully, one hand trailing along the backs of the seats, testing each step before placing her weight down. The water rippled around her knees now, cold and rising, but she did not look down. She only looked ahead. After a moment, Ethan followed. Each step felt heavier than the last, his body still catching up to the reality around him. But her presence, small, unwavering, gave his movement direction. Halfway there, he slipped. Just slightly. But enough. His hand hit the side of a seat, steadying himself before he could fall. The sound echoed louder than it should have, sharp against the quiet pressure of the water. Lily turned instantly. Her eyes wide, not with fear, but focus. I have you, she said, reaching back without hesitation. And again, her hand found his. This time, he held on. Not because he had no choice, but because he trusted her. They moved together after that. Step by step. Through the rising cold. Through the dim, flickering light. Towards something uncertain, but necessary. And as they reached the narrow panel, Lily placed her hand against it, feeling along the edge until her fingers found the latch. She paused. Just for a second. Not to doubt, but to breathe. Then she looked back at him. We are almost there, she said. And for the first time since the sky had broken. It sounded like the truth. The panel did not open easily. Nothing in that moment did. Lily's fingers traced the edges, searching for something that would give, something that would respond. The metal was cold, almost numb against her skin, as if it had already decided to belong to the water instead of the air. Behind them, the cabin shifted again. A quiet, heavy movement. The kind that reminded them both, time was running out. Ethan leaned against the side wall, one hand braced, his breath uneven but steady enough to keep him present. He watched her, not with doubt, but with something deeper now. Dependence. Can you do it? He asked, his voice low, careful not to let it break. Lily did not answer right away. She pressed her palm flat against the panel, then slid it downward, feeling every inch. Her fingers paused near a small indentation, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. Or unless you needed it. She pushed. Nothing. She adjusted her angle, pressing harder this time, her shoulders tightening with effort. For a second, it felt like the panel would not move at all. Then, a soft shift. Barely a sound. But enough. I got it, she whispered. The latch released with a quiet click, and the panel loosened just slightly, creating a narrow opening. A breath of colder air slipped through, brushing against their faces like a signal from the outside world. It was not much. But it was something. Ethan stepped closer, his movements slower than he wanted, but more controlled now. Together, they pulled at the edge of the panel, widening the gap just enough for a person to pass through. Or at least, someone small. Lily looked at the opening, then back at Ethan. You have to go after me, she said. Not asking. Not waiting. Just stating what needed to happen. Ethan frowned slightly, his instinct rising immediately. No, he said quietly. You go after me. She shook her head. If you go first, you might get stuck, she replied. I can check if it is safe. There was no fear in her voice. Only logic. Simple. Clear. Certain. Ethan hesitated. Not because he disagreed, but because something inside him resisted the idea of letting her face the unknown first. Lily saw it. And for the first time, a small flicker of urgency crossed her expression. We do not have time, she said softer now. Please trust me. That word again. Trust. It landed heavier this time. Ethan exhaled slowly, the sound almost lost beneath the quiet hum of the water now reaching higher behind them. Then he nodded. Okay, he said. I trust you. Lily did not smile. She simply turned, lowering herself carefully toward the opening. The edge was tight, the space narrow, forcing her to angle her shoulders as she slipped through. For a moment, she disappeared halfway, her legs still inside the cabin, her upper body already beyond. Then, I am outside. Her voice came, slightly muffled but clear enough. There is a piece of the wing. You can stand on it. Ethan moved forward immediately. The opening felt smaller now that he was facing it. The edges pressed against his shoulders as he lowered himself, careful, deliberate, forcing his body to follow the path she had created. For a second, he thought he might not fit. Then he adjusted, turned slightly, pushed through, and suddenly, cold air rushed around him. Open space. The storm had not stopped. But it felt different out here. Louder. Wider. Real. He pulled himself up onto the broken section of the wing, his shoes slipping slightly before finding balance. The surface tilted just enough to remind him they were still not safe. Not yet. Lily stood a few feet away, her small frame steady despite the wind, one hand gripping a jagged edge for support. She looked at him, her eyes scanning quickly. Are you okay? She asked. Ethan nodded, catching his breath. Yes, he said. Then, after a pause, softer, more certain. Because of you. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The storm moved around them. The ocean stretched endlessly below. And behind them, the plane continued its quiet descent into the water. But they were no longer inside it. They were standing between what had been and whatever came next. Together. The wind did not slow for them. It rushed past, sharp and endless, carrying the scent of salt and rain, pressing against their clothes as if testing how long they could hold on. The wing beneath their feet tilted slightly with every passing second. Not enough to throw them off, but enough to remind them this was temporary. Very temporary. Lily tightened her grip on the edge of the metal, her fingers small against the cold surface. The storm clouds above moved fast, breaking apart just enough to reveal flashes of distant lightning far out on the horizon. She looked down once. Only once. Dark water stretched below them, shifting and rising, reflecting the sky in broken pieces. It felt endless. She looked away immediately. We have to stay here, she said, her voice quieter now, but still steady. Someone will come. Ethan stood beside her, his breathing more controlled now, though every muscle in his body still carried the weight of what had just happened. His suit, once precise and untouched, clung heavily to him, soaked and cold. But none of that seemed to matter anymore. He glanced at her. You knew where the panel was, he said, almost to himself. How? Lily shrugged slightly, her eyes still scanning the distance. I saw it when I got on, she replied. I always look for exits. There was something in the way she said it. Not fear. Not pride. Just habit. Ethan nodded slowly, absorbing that without asking more. Some answers did not need to be explained. Not right now. A gust of wind swept across them, stronger this time. Lily's balance shifted for a brief second, her foot sliding half an inch before she caught herself. Ethan reacted instantly. His hand moved to her shoulder, steadying her without hesitation. I have you, he said. The words came naturally. Without calculation. Without distance. Lily looked up at him. For a moment, she did not say anything. Then, very softly, I know. That was all. But it was enough. Time passed differently out there. Not in minutes. Not in seconds. But in breaths. In glances toward the sky. In the quiet hope that something, anything, would appear. Then, a sound. Faint at first. Almost mistaken for the wind. Ethan turned his head slightly, narrowing his eyes. Do you hear that? He asked. Lily tilted her head. Listened. There it was again. A distant hum. Low. Steady. Growing. Her eyes widened just a little. Yes, she whispered. They both looked toward the horizon. Through the shifting clouds, a small light appeared. Then another. Moving. Getting closer. The sound grew louder now, unmistakable. Not the storm. Not the ocean. Something else. Rescue. Lily's grip on the metal tightened, but this time not from fear. From holding on just a little longer. Ethan exhaled slowly, something inside his chest loosening for the first time since the sky had broken apart. You did it, he said, his voice quiet but certain. Lily shook her head gently. No, she replied. We did. The lights grew brighter, cutting through the darkness, reflecting off the restless water below. And for the first time since everything began, the night no longer felt endless. The sound grew louder until it filled the sky. Not overwhelming. Not chaotic. But steady, like something that knew exactly where it was going. The beam of light swept across the water first, wide and searching, before locking onto the broken wing where Ethan and Lily stood. For a moment, it felt like the world had narrowed to that single circle of brightness, holding them in place. Lily raised her hand instinctively, shielding her eyes. They see us, she said, her voice carrying a quiet relief she had been holding back for too long. Ethan nodded, his gaze fixed upward. I know, he replied. The helicopter moved closer, its presence pushing against the wind, carving a space in the storm that had felt endless just minutes before. The downdraft rippled across the water, sending small waves outward in every direction. A voice came through, distant but clear enough. Stay where you are. We have you in sight. Lily exhaled slowly. Not a dramatic breath. Just release. The kind that comes when you finally believe something is going to be okay. Ethan glanced down at her, noticing the way her shoulders lowered slightly, the way her grip on the metal softened just enough to show she was no longer bracing for the worst. You did more than most people ever could, he said quietly. She shook her head again, almost automatically. I just did not leave, she answered. The simplicity of it settled between them. Not heroism. Not sacrifice. Just a choice. A choice to stay. The helicopter hovered now, close enough that the details became clear. The open side door, the figures inside moving with calm precision, the rope beginning to lower through the rushing air. It swayed slightly as it descended, dancing with the wind before steadying just above the wing. Ethan looked at it, then back at Lily. You go first, he said. This time, his voice left no room for argument. Lily hesitated. Not out of fear, but because she understood what that meant. You are coming right after me? She asked. Right after you, he confirmed. She studied his face for a brief second, searching for something she could trust. She found it. A small nod. Then she stepped forward. Carefully. Deliberately. The rope brushed against her arm, rough against her skin, but she held on to it, adjusting her grip the way she had seen in movies, in moments she never thought would become real. A rescuer leaned down from above, guiding her with calm, steady instructions. "You are doing great. Just hold on." Lily did. Her small frame lifted slowly, rising into the air, away from the wing, away from the cold metal and the dark water below. Ethan watched her the entire time, not looking away, not blinking, until she reached the doorway and disappeared inside. Only then did he move. The rope lowered again. The same voice. "Your turn." Ethan stepped forward, his body still heavy, still recovering, but his focus sharper now than it had been in years. He reached for the rope. Paused. Then glanced up one last time, just in time to see Lily inside, her small figure leaning forward, watching him, waiting. Not leaving. He held on to that. Then he climbed. Up through the wind. Up through the storm. Toward the light that had finally found them. The helicopter door closed with a solid, reassuring sound. Not loud. But final. Inside, the world felt different. Contained. Warm. Real. The roar of the storm faded into a distant hum, replaced by the steady rhythm of the engine and the low voices of the rescue crew moving with practiced calm. Soft lights filled the cabin, casting everything in a quiet glow that felt almost unreal after the darkness outside. Lily sat near the doorway, wrapped in a thick thermal blanket that seemed too big for her small frame. Her damp hoodie clung underneath, but the warmth was already beginning to reach her hands. She did not notice it. Her eyes were fixed on the open space where Ethan had just climbed in. The moment his feet touched the floor, she leaned forward slightly. Not rushing. Not calling out. Just making sure. He was here. Ethan steadied himself as one of the crew members guided him to sit down. Another placed a blanket over his shoulders, the fabric heavy and dry, grounding him in a way he had not expected. "Take it slow," the rescuer said gently. Ethan nodded, though his attention had already shifted. To her. Across the small cabin, Lily sat quietly, her fingers gripping the edge of the blanket as if she still needed something to hold on to. For a second, neither of them spoke. The distance between them was only a few feet. But it carried everything that had just happened. Everything that could not be explained in words. Ethan leaned forward slightly, his voice softer now, stripped of everything it once carried. "Hey," he said. Lily looked up immediately. "You made it," she replied. Not a question. A statement. Ethan gave a small nod. "Because you did not leave," he said. The words settled between them, simple and clear. One of the crew members moved past, offering Lily a small bottle of water. She accepted it with both hands, nodding politely before setting it in her lap without opening it. Her focus never fully left Ethan. After a moment, she spoke again. "Are you okay now?" she asked. There was something in the way she said it. Not curiosity. Not politeness. But responsibility. As if the answer mattered more than anything else in that moment. Ethan paused. He had been asked that question countless times in his life. By assistants. By colleagues. By people who expected a certain answer. He always gave it. Automatically. "I am fine." But this time, he did not. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years, he answered honestly. "I think I am getting there," he said. Lily nodded slowly. That seemed to be enough. She adjusted the blanket around her shoulders, finally taking a small sip of water, her movements calm now, grounded. Outside the window, the storm stretched beneath them, distant and fading as the helicopter moved forward. Away from the crash. Away from the cold. Towards something new. Ethan leaned back slightly, the weight of the blanket pressing gently against him. For the first time in a long time, the silence around him did not feel empty. It felt shared. And across from him, a little girl who had nothing, had somehow given him something he did not know he had lost. Morning did not arrive all at once. It slipped in quietly, through glass, through silence, through the soft hum of a city already awake. By the time the sun rose fully over the skyline, everything from the night before felt distant. Not forgotten, but almost unreal, like something that belonged to another life. Lily sat on the edge of a narrow hospital bed, her feet not quite touching the floor. The oversized sweatshirt they had given her replaced her damp clothes, the sleeves covering most of her hands. Her worn backpack rested beside her, still zipped, still held close. She had not let it out of sight. Across the room, the television played softly, muted captions scrolling across the screen. Words about the storm. About the emergency landing. About survivors. But none of it held her attention. She was watching the door. Waiting. Not because anyone told her to, but because something in her said she should. A gentle knock broke the quiet. The door opened slowly. Not a doctor. Not a nurse. A man in a dark suit stepped in, followed by another, then another. Their presence filled the room without noise, calm and controlled, like they belonged to a different world entirely. Lily's fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the bed. She did not speak. She just watched. One of the men stepped forward, his voice respectful, measured. "Good morning, Lily," he said. "We are here on behalf of Mr. Ethan Caldwell." At the sound of that name, something shifted in her expression. Not surprise. Recognition. The man continued. "He asked us to find you first thing this morning." Lily tilted her head slightly. "Is he okay?" she asked. That was her first question. Not where she was going. Not what they wanted. Just him. The man gave a small nod. "He is," he said. "And he has not stopped asking about you." A pause settled into the room. Then, from outside, a sound. Low at first. Then clearer. Engines. More than one. Lily's gaze moved toward the window. Curiosity, quiet but growing. One of the men stepped aside slightly, allowing her a clear view. Down below, lined along the curb in perfect order. 5 black Cadillacs. Polished. Still. Waiting. They did not feel like a reward. They felt like a message. Lily looked back at the man. "I did not do anything special," she said softly. The man's expression softened, just slightly. "Sometimes," he replied, "what feels small to you changes everything for someone else." Lily glanced once more at the cars outside. Then down at her hands. Still small. Still uncertain. But no longer invisible. And somewhere, not far from that room, a man who once had everything was making sure he would not lose the one person who chose to stay. The city moved as it always did. Cars passed. People walked. Morning unfolded without asking who had survived the night before. But inside the quiet hospital corridor, time slowed. Ethan Caldwell stood near the window, dressed now in clean clothes that fit the life he had always known. The world had already begun to return to him, calls waiting, messages stacking, decisions that only he could make. But he had not touched his phone. Not once. His gaze rested on the reflection in the glass. For years, that reflection had been enough. Sharp. Controlled. Untouchable. Now, it looked different. Not because of what he had lost, but because of what he had found. A soft knock behind him. He turned. The door opened. And there she was. Lily Carter. Standing small in the doorway, her oversized sweatshirt still slipping slightly off one shoulder, her worn backpack held close like it always had been. For a moment, neither of them moved. Not out of uncertainty, but because something in that space felt important. Ethan took a step forward. Then another. Slow. Careful. As if closing the distance too quickly might break something neither of them could see. "You are here," he said. Lily nodded. "I wanted to make sure you were okay," she replied. The same words. The same quiet responsibility. Ethan let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. "I am," he said. Then, more firmly, "I am now." A pause. Not empty. Full. He glanced down at the backpack in her hands. "You held on to that the whole time," he said. Lily looked at it, then back at him. "It is all I have," she answered simply. Ethan shook his head, just slightly. "Not anymore." The words did not come with hesitation. They did not need to. Lily blinked, processing, not fully understanding yet. Ethan lowered himself slightly, meeting her at eye level, not as a CEO, not as a man above her, but as someone standing beside her. "You saved my life," he said. "And I do not mean just out there." His voice softened. "You reminded me what it means to stay. What it means to not walk away." Lily's grip on the backpack loosened, just a little. Ethan continued. "I do not want to send cars or gifts and disappear," he said. "That is not what this is." He paused. Then, gently, "Come home with me." The words did not echo. They settled. Lily looked at him, searching his face the same way she had the night before, quietly, carefully, as if she could feel the truth instead of just hearing it. "Just for today?" she asked. Ethan smiled. Not the practiced kind. Not the polite one. A real one. "For as long as you want," he said. Silence again. Then, a small nod. Not dramatic. Not loud. But certain. And in that moment, something shifted. Not in the city. Not in the world. But in two lives that had crossed in the dark. And chosen not to let go. Because sometimes, the greatest rescue does not end when you are pulled from the storm. Sometimes, it begins when someone finally says, "You are not alone anymore."